In the 21st century, manga has been one of the most popular forms of art out there, rivaled only by the American comics. This rivalry was so intense that it gave birth to another form of art, the Korean manhwa, which has an art style similar to manga but the written format of comics. A new experience for comics or manga lovers around the world. And the most widely praised manhwa is Solo Leveling. However, despite being that popular, it remained in its manhwa form for over 8 years, leading its fans to thinking that it would never get animated, like in the case of 20th Century Boys or Vagabond. But at the beginning of 2024, it was finally released. And with 5 episodes out there, we can finally make a review. Does it live up to the expectations, or is it another disappointment? Let's spread the facts on the board and squeeze the show out of its bad and good aspects, and then come up to a conclusion. Let's do a quick overview. In this show, there are 2 sides, monsters and hunters. These monsters travel through gates to attack humanity, while the hunters protect it from the monsters, and occasionally travel through the same gates into the dungeons where the monsters come from. Sort of like domains in Genshin Impact, but in the real world. These monsters and hunters vary in their power level, and the level is indicated by their rank. The E rank is the lowest and the S rank is the highest, which was explained quite effectively in the first scene, where a group of E rank hunters failed to clear a wave of monsters before being saved by the S rank hunters, showcasing the clear gap in strength between the two. And without wasting too much time, we got to know how the world works. And while it's effective at doing that, it still lacked in other aspects. The poor choice of characters, for example, which were slaughtered before we had any chance to know anything about them, meaning that they were not important. And since they were not, it doesn't matter what happens to them, which lowers the impact of the scene and its importance. A thing that you don't want to do for the first scene of your show. That would have been the case if it was the main character or an important character in the place of the surviving hunter. After all, that event happened 3 years before the present time of the show, which was a year after Jin-woo awakened his powers and became a hunter. One of the hunters was saved by the S-rank heroes, which consists of a group of a healer, mage and a fighter. And the one who saved him was the healer, which is an odd choice in my opinion, since there already exists a fighter that has immense strength and speed in the group. I know it was an approach to showcase the relationship between the S-rank heroes, but it still was kinda odd, especially since we saw a couple of mages and a couple of brawlers in the weak hunter group, and the fact that the scene's objective is to contrast the weak hunters with the strong ones. We already saw that their abilities were ineffective against these monsters, but we didn't see their healing abilities. Yet the first thing we saw about an S-rank hero is their healing ability. He healed the weak hunter instantly, which would have been impressive if we saw that the others would struggle to heal such wounds caused by ants, which is another poor choice in my opinion. I mean, why ants? They don't exactly evoke a sense of fear, which makes defeating them not that much of a big deal, which is why, despite the fact that the S ranks defeated them with ease, it still wasn't that impressive. And considering that they are the highest ranks amongst the hunters, makes it a little bit underwhelming. It makes me as a viewer think, oh, so that's the pinnacle of power? Okay. We didn't see much of them, but none of them have left an impact. Not their abilities, their personalities, or even their designs. The only one who seemed to be remotely interesting was the one with the fire powers, and that is because he defeated a wave of ants instantly all by himself, making us think that he was stronger than the S-rank hero. These hunters were not born with their abilities, no. They awakened them at some point in their life. Depending on the power of the awakening, your level as a hunter is determined. And once it's determined, no matter how much you train, you cannot change your level of power. Such as in the case of the main character, Jin-woo, who had the weakest awakening in the world. He was so weak that he became a mockery in the hunter community, and they began calling him the weakest hunter. He gets injured in every raid and almost every single time by the weakest form of monsters, which I get it, is enough reason to call him very weak, but the weakest hunter? That seems so forced. It's almost cringy, but it does serve its purpose. Kind of. You see, these hunters are assigned to raid some dungeons, but they don't do it for the fuck of it. They actually do it for a living. After clearing dungeons from monsters, you gather the resources equally and then sell them in the real world. And despite him being the weakest, he was still getting assigned every once in a while, and even during the raids, he still does the fighting. And despite that he was widely known as the weakest hunter, he was still not getting defended by any of the hunters. He still fights with his rusty knife trying to accomplish something, but why would he fight in the first place? In the end, whether you fight or not, you're still getting paid anyway. If it were me, I would just wait around the corner and wait for the monsters to be defeated by the hunters. The writer did make him a mockery in the story, but he wasn't really getting bullied for that. If you go as far as calling him the weakest for sympathy, then him being bullied should come to no surprise. But no, everyone is actually nice to him. If hunters did get a little bit stronger every time they make a successful raid or kill a monster, then it would make more sense. Later on, Jin-woo bypassed this limitation and gained a form of awakening where he gets stronger by doing tasks such as clearing monsters. But although he did, we know that most of the characters that we are gonna see are not gonna get any stronger, which is another underwhelming aspect. These awakenings happen at random time, and what causes it is not specified, and there is also no specific reason why some people get weak awakenings while others get strong ones. That's not the only thing that's random. The gates that open here and there are also opening at random. Something happening randomly means that there is a question that cannot be answered, and that is kind of not exciting. Perhaps the most exciting thing that happened at random was the double dungeon that has been found. Jin-woo and a group of hunters raided a harmless E-rank dungeon, and despite clearing it, the gate leading to it did not disappear, which means a number of monsters would leak into the real world unless they clear that dungeon. They take a vote, and Jin-woo, the man who almost died in the E-rank dungeon, decided to vote yes for continuing the raid. And we all know how that ended up. As soon as they reached the smiling statue, they had a proper greeting. The gate behind them closed and they got trapped. Everyone who tries to leave gets butchered, and anyone that tries to move gets evaporated. The only way to survive is to apply with the commands written on a tablet, something that the weakest of the group was able to figure out. Him being the weakest made him overthink the situation and come up with a solution. I like this concept for the fact that despite the diversity of the group, everyone is equal. No matter how fast or strong you are, you would suffer the same demise. I believe that this is the most iconic part of the show. You know, it's a good concept when the show itself becomes famous because of it. And there is a rule, if it gets memed, then there is something intriguing about it. What I liked the most in the second episode is the last command, where all the remaining hunters gather inside a circle. The gate that closed behind them opens up. A number of statues approach the circle in order to butcher them, stopped only by the gazes of the hunters. And despite there were enough hunters to stop those statues, some of them were selfish. They saw that the gate was open, and they started leaving one by one until there were not enough hunters to gaze at the statues. And there is also one condition, that one hunter at least should stay in the circle in order for the gate to remain open. At least one hunter will die. What I truly liked about the scene is that Jin-woo, the main character, did not give up his life. He wanted to survive as well. He only volunteered because it was not possible to save his friend, who was petrified by fear. And since he lost his legs, so there is no way for them to survive anyway, so he surrendered himself. At least his friend gets to survive, right? Before dying, he asks for a second chance in life, and he gets just that. He gets spared by the statue and gets something close to a second awakening. He does tasks, and when he does them, he becomes stronger. If he avoids them, he faces consequences. He sees a floating screen in front of him, similar to a game notification. Whatever has revived him has so much control that he can send him wherever he wants or give him as much strength as he wants. This level of reality warping is confusing, and that is because at this point it seems like a game or a simulation. But we also get to know that these things only started happening 10 years ago, and that the world was normal until then. It makes us wonder what happened 10 years ago that caused so much difference in the world. There was nothing magic-like before these 10 years, but now there is. And whatever the explanation is, it remains kind of confusing. And perhaps that's why they keep on info dumping us every single episode, sometimes giving us information that we already know, which in my opinion is just lazy writing. I mean, look at the first scene and how much it told us. Just use the same format and we will get to know all of those information about the world. Some of the information were introduced to us at awful timings as well. felt like the clean source of energy that we were told about, and information that we didn't really need in order to understand the next coming scenes. These scenes and some other scenes are used to suck the tension. You know, the scene with his sister, his friend, and the yellow-haired S-rank that we got to know later. But I still believe that the organizing of those scenes were just not on point. Showing scenes at the wrong time or giving information at the wrong time is always a bad thing. Another thing that is worth noting is the quick shift in Jin-woo's personality over just the first few episodes. Not just in that, but also in strength. The rise in his strength was a bit too fast in my opinion, which takes away the struggling aspect of his character way too quickly. We were sympathizing with him just 2 episodes ago, and now we kind of feel a little bit of jealousy. Another thing that came to my mind is the punishment he got, where he was getting chased by a number of huge worms for hours. At that point, Jin-woo's power level was still the same as the weakest hunter, and despite that, he was able to survive such a harsh punishment, being chased by such huge worms, which feels like a contradiction. Like, wait a minute, isn't he really weak? Wasn't he almost killed by a goblin just an episode ago? So what is going on here? The show does have some sense of realism, but it loses it sometimes, which makes it less consistent, and the reader or the viewer would be thrown away by that. This is pretty much everything that I came to notice that is remotely negative about the show, but in the end it remains a good one. This just prevents it from being in the same conversation as shows like Death Note or Attack on Titan. And since Jujutsu Kaisen's 2nd season was over, we have something to watch for the time being. That's all I gotta say for today. Be a good student and subscribe to this channel. And don't be a statue in the class. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think. You should feel free to voice your opinion in this class. See ya.